Hi students, my name is Amanda Jo Ratcliffe and I'll be your instructor this semester in this online speech course. I wanted to make this welcome video for you because an online speech course is a little different and in some ways a little challenging compared to the traditional face-to-face course. So I wanted to give you an idea of what to expect. Some of the things I'm going to tell you might sound a little harsh, but I want to tell you these things because they're the best way to approach this class and I want you to be successful. Essentially, there's going to be four things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this class, the online version compared to the face-to-face version. We're going to be looking at the importance of reading in this particular class. We're also going to be discussing the importance of participation in the discussion boards. And then finally, we're going to figure out how are we going to do our speech assignments in this online speech class. So first, let's look at the comparison between this version of the course, this online version, versus your traditional face-to-face. A lot of people think that the online course is a lot easier than the face-to-face. This is not true. You have the same content that you're going to cover, and essentially you're going to be required to do a little bit more than some of those traditional face-to-face students will be required to do. For instance, in a face-to-face setting, I would typically be giving lectures every day in class. That's not going to happen in this online course. Instead, you're going to be taking more responsibility, reading your textbooks, applying that knowledge to the discussion posts, to the speech assignments, and of course to your exams. So there's a little bit more burden on the student in this particular section. And of course, there is still the requirement that we complete speech assignments, and so you're going to be doing that. You don't get out of giving a speech just because this is an online class. And we're going to be figuring out some ways to do that that are still comparable to what you would receive in a professional setting or in the class setting, but how you can do that at home. You also will be taking exams. However, this is a fully online class and no exams will be given on campus. Everything, including the speeches, exams, and assignments, will be done on your time in your space. Next, let's talk about the importance of reading in this particular class. Everything is on the course website, and so you need to make sure that you take the time to carefully review the website. A good place to start is the Start Here module. You need to read everything that's in that module and make sure that you understand the requirements of this class. Don't think that you can just kind of peruse through that module and not really grasp the information and be successful. You really need to make sure that you read that, because a lot of the questions that you'll have initially about the course will be answered in that module. Also, I've created a group of resources for you under the speech preparation module. This is for your benefit. You're expected not only to read the textbook and figure out how to give your speeches, I'll be giving some instruction on that as well, but then you also have these resources in the speech preparation module that will allow you to, on your own, figure out how do I do speaker notes? What will that look like? What does a good outline consist of? Those types of elements are provided for your benefit under that speech preparation module. The last thing that you need to read carefully are the weekly announcements that I make. At the beginning of each week, I'll post an update. Here's what's to come. Here's what you need to be on the lookout for. And so that's very important to help keep you on track. Of course, you could probably do that on your own, but there's another reason you need to check weekly announcements, and that is we might have some changes that occur during the semester. Either an assignment may change or something might happen or an extra credit opportunity might be presented. Changes to the assignments don't happen very often. It's pretty rare. But if it does happen, you definitely want to know about it. And so read those weekly assignments. Next, let's talk about the importance of participation in the discussion board. The discussion boards are going to be the main areas in which you interact with each other for this class. And so we want to make sure that we interact in a scholarly fashion. This is not a time for us to use texting style language or abbreviated messaging type stuff. We want good written English language posts, college level worthy posts. They need to be detailed, they need to be respectful in their tone, and they also need to be adding to the conversation. We don't just need to repeat what's in the book, but actually put in our own examples to the discussions as well. It's perfectly okay if you disagree with a post that your classmate makes. We're not all going to disagree. However, we all need to be respectful of each other, and we need to watch our tone. That's very important. We also need to learn netiquette. Netiquette is like online etiquette. It's rules and manners for interacting online. It's very important that we learn to do this because it's required and expected in the business environment. And so this can be found in the Start Here module. There's a little tutorial about netiquette that you will want to take and that you will want to remember as well. We need to realize that your grade depends on not only your post on a discussion board, but also your responses to your classmates. You need to read discussion post assignments very carefully and make sure you understand how many classmates you're supposed to respond to. If you just do your initial post and that's all you do, you won't get the full amount of points like you would if you actually responded to your classmates. And so it doesn't matter how wonderfully written that initial post is, you still need to make sure that you're interacting with classmates. Make sure those interactions are more than just, hey, good job, or I liked your post, or that's great. You need to add to the conversation, make a note of maybe something that they mentioned that you thought was really good, and then talk about why you thought that, or add an example, or you could even counter some of their information. But just make sure that you're adding to the academic conversation. Last, let's talk about how to complete a speech assignment in an online environment. The first thing we need to realize is that this class requires you to give public speeches. That means you need to have a public to give your speeches to. You need an audience. And this is where it's a little more challenging for you than maybe it is for the traditional face-to-face student. They can just walk into class and they have their audience there. You, however, have to gather your own audience. And you need to gather a live audience of at least 4 to 6 adults. You can have children in your audience, but there needs to be at least 4 to 6 adults in your audience watching you give your speech, and you need to give your speech directly to that audience, not to the camera. So what I'm doing right now is I'm speaking to a camera. You're actually going to be speaking to a group of people, and the camera is just going to record you doing that. If for some reason you cannot gather at least 4 adults to watch every single one of your speeches, you need to drop this course and either take the hybrid version or the face-to-face version. That sounds really harsh, and I don't want you to drop this course, but that's been a big problem for some people. And so you need to realize right away that that's a requirement, and if you can't meet that requirement, you need to find a different version that allows you to do that. Be creative on how you gather your audience. Of course, most of you will probably ask family and friends. That's perfectly acceptable. But consider some other groups, people you have access to, perhaps church groups or any clubs or organizations that you're involved in. Arrange for them to listen to your speech, maybe some employees or co-workers that you work for or work with. You could even get creative and ask a senior citizen center if you could come in and give your speech to some older people. They would love to have people come in and interact with their people there. But you need to plan ahead. This is not something you're going to be doing on the spur of the moment. It's not going to work. There's a lot of logistics involved. You need to invite people, hey, can you come over to the house at this amount of time? You need to make sure they can all come. So there's some scheduling, communication, and planning that goes into these speech assignments that's a little bit more than what the face-to-face students have to deal with. When you're giving your speech, especially to family and friends, you might be standing in your living room doing this, and that's perfectly fine. You need to pick a location that's quiet and one in which you are the only thing going on in the room. So if you're giving your speech in the living room and your family is there watching, turn the TV off. It's distracting to not only your live audience, but to the audience that watches your video later. Turn the radio off. Turn any music, any noise, turn that off. Make sure the pets are put away. Make sure that someone's watching the babies. So make sure things are all worked out so you have a quiet location where you are the center of attention. Do not give your speech outdoors. Do not give your speech in a public place where there's things happening. That's very distracting. If you want to get a classroom somewhere or a quiet corner of a room, that's fine, but just make sure once again, that you choose a location that's not distracting. In terms of delivery, we also need to think about how we deliver. We still want to promote a professional sense of delivery, and we want to avoid a certain level of casualness. That's appropriate for conversations, but for a formal speech, we need to be a bit more polished, and that goes into a lot of different things. That's not only how prepared we are, but it's how we're dressed and how we stand. And so when you're giving your speech in front of your friends and family, you need to stand up. You need to be presentable. You need to dress appropriately. You don't have to dress formally, but do get dressed. Don't wear your pajamas to give a speech. You're not going to wear pajamas to the board meeting to give a speech, so you don't need to wear pajamas when you give a speech for this class. Put on shoes. If you can just think about how would I dress to go to a classroom to give a speech, that's what you need to dress like at home when you give your speech. If something prevents you from standing up, if you have a disability, that's certainly okay. I've had students in the past that maybe they broke their leg and were unable to stand. But all able-bodied people need to stand up, have good posture. That's part of delivery. And so consider those things. Preparation is still required. Just because it's your family and friends doesn't mean you can just wing a speech. You're still being graded on, is this speech organized? Does it look like you know the information? Have you rehearsed? Is the PowerPoint effective? Those are things that you definitely want to consider. Some people are able to hook their PowerPoint up to a television. Some people are able just to turn their laptop screens and let the camera look at it. That's fine, but just know that you need to be a little creative in how you present your PowerPoint, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as we get into the semester. Let's talk about recording the speech, though. This seems to be a big deal, and we want to make sure everyone knows exactly what's required. First of all, the requirements are in the syllabus and they're on the assignments, and so just read these requirements very carefully. Once again, you're going to be giving the speech to a live audience, and one of those audience members needs to have a camera that can record you. And they need to hit record, they need to pan the entire audience, and then they need to focus the camera on you and leave it on you as you begin your speech. The camera does not need to go off of you and go back to the audience while you're speaking, because once you start speaking, then we need to see you the entire time, okay? Now, you need to communicate this to your camera person. Don't assume that they know this. You are responsible for communicating that information to them. One thing I don't want you to do is pan the audience, have a pause or a break in the recording, and then the camera focus on you and hit record again. There should be no breaks in the recording. I need one big shot of the audience and then you giving the speech. If there's a break in the recording, I'm not going to accept that, because I don't know if that audience stayed to watch you give a speech, and therefore I can't give you a grade for a public speech. So you need to make sure that I can see the audience, and then without break in recording, I can see you giving the speech. Once again, give clear instructions to your camera person on this. You need to go ahead and open a YouTube account if you don't already have one, and figure out how to upload speeches or videos. It's very easy to do. I'm sure most of you have already figured that out by now. But you also need to realize sometimes that takes a really long time. Our speeches won't be super long. I think maybe the longest might be 7 minutes. But if you're waiting until the last minute to submit your assignment and you're waiting on YouTube to load it, it could be quite frustrating and could result in points being deducted. So there's a lot to consider. This class is not necessarily easy, but I think it's going to be worthwhile. We're going to be hearing some things that, we're going to be learning some things that are going to be beneficial and useful for you in the business environment. And I think that you'll really enjoy this class. Don't get scared by the requirements that I just talked about. Just go get them done, and you can do it. It's fine. A lot of people have done it before, and I think a lot of people that take the online version of this course honestly come away with more knowledge than those who take the face-to-face, because the responsibility of learning is put back on you, and you now have a little bit more knowledge about how to appropriately video and upload presentations, which may not seem like a lot to you, but it's a very valuable information that perhaps the face-to-face students don't get. If I can answer any questions throughout the semester, just contact me. My contact information is in the Start Here module. And as always, I'm happy that you're here, and let me know if I can help at any time. Thanks so much.